Mr. Bola.
Yeah, I worked it out already.
Yes, I know. I know you are technically sharp.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
So,
so you know how to do it, Musne?
yeah, easy,
Cool.
easy.
Okay, easy, easy. Thank
Yeah,
you.
okay.
Now you can for the time remove it. Then when the time is allocated to you, you can now prepare sharing it. Then you
All
share.
right. Is it still showing?
Yeah, it's showing. Just remove it from there.
Okay. Is it
Uh-huh.
on now?
No, it's still on.
Still on.
Uh-huh.
Okay, let me see how to get this
Go to
out.
that icon, the one that was saying sharing, and say
Yeah,
whether can you
I
remove.
tried that one. Let's just see again.
Uh-huh.
Still showing.
Yeah, still showing.
Okay,
Let
let's
me see.
see. Okay, I think I'll find a way here. Hold on.
Will you find a way?
Yeah, now still
Still.
seriously. Okay, okay. I'll figure this thing out now.
Oh, the best way to do it is just, yeah, I think you need to remove it so
Yeah, I'm
that,
just thinking how to remove this. There is a
okay.
way. I've just got to figure it out.
If you
Uh,
minimize,
yeah, I minimized and it's still okay. It's on the Zoom itself. There's something I've got to do here. Let's
okay.
just see. Remote control pause. How's that?
Uh-huh. It's still showing.
Still showing. Okay,
Yeah.
share. Who can share? Okay, let's see why I'm in the share now.
It's still showing. If you go on top, there are instructions there. I don't know which one is it applicable for removal. If you
Yeah,
say
that's what I'm looking at. It's got
hide
screen
slides,
application windows.
uh-huh.
Uh,
If you go on top, maybe I don't know
yeah,
how does your screen look like, but if you
right.
go on top, it has home, insert, design, transitions, animation, and
Yeah.
then there's a slide show.
Ah,
Let
man.
me find out from Luazi, from my colleague, how do we remove it?
Still?
Still, yeah. Mr.
Gosh,
Luazi,
let's. Okay, wait. There we are.
thank you.
Now?
Cool. Thank you. There you
Right.
go.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
If you don't mind, you can switch off your video.
Okay.
Okay,
There we go.
cool. Thank you.
Must I leave it off during the presentation? Yo. Okay.
Whether does it affect you? If it does not, yeah, you can leave it. You can show your face. If it affects your internet connection, you can
No,
just
it's
not
not.
show your face. Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's fine. I think
Okay.
maybe in the beginning, I'll show my face so they get an idea, and then maybe
Right.
I'll switch off. We'll see.
Right. Okay. Fine.
Okay,
Thank you. Right.
cool.
Cool.
Khawungene mfoka Ben. Tata Ben khawungene.
Enidi ngaphakathi.
Apha man ndifuna la profiling pic yam man ibe yaseParlamente kungaveli kule ndawo ndikuyo tata. Ungakwazi uyenza apha online ngoku?
Hey, iyandibetha ke wena bawupita laa nto zange ndayenza nami yasi.
Bendiyenzile tata, bendiyoyenza kwa-IT bandenzela but kwiimeeting ezithile ingaphumi. Andiyazi noba ayiseyivakali kakuhle na.
Hey,
But okay, kodwa ke ndizawuphinde ndiye ndikhe ndibuze uba inoba into ingxaki mani iphuncuka le nto.
ewe man fuze uba iba permanent kaloku.
Suppose uba permanent le nto. Ndizake ndiye tata mani khe ndibatshekishe man because ngoku kusekuvela le ndawo ndikuyo.
Ewe ke ngoku umntu akafuni ukuvela into zakhe.
Man kaloku sinezi zinto esizifihlayo futhi.
Hey, inyoka yakho sizayibona inyoka yakho.
Injalo buti man. Okay, hayi mfoka Ben ndizayizama tata wena.
All right.
Good morning, honorable members.
Thanks. Okay, tata.
On my
Morning,
watch,
Chairperson.
we are 2 minutes to go. I'll request that we start our engagement, and we start by looking at the apologies, if any, Mr. Manela.
Good morning, Chair. Chair, we haven't yet received any formal apology. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Let's also go to the adoption of the agenda. Our program is straightforward for today, is to afford the civil society movements and citizens of this country an opportunity and the organizations to present before this select committee. So can I get a mover for the adoption of the agenda?
I move, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable Peter moved. Any seconder?
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Berenhorst. The agenda is now duly adopted for our consumption. I'll just do the few remarks before we start with the process. We wish to welcome all of you members of the Select Committee who are very dedicated to do the work of this collective. Let me also welcome Mr. Evan Bola, coordinator of the Local Government Advocacy and Learning Network, representing 80 civil society organizations, Dr. Shara Menu, Gilbert, representing Public Affairs Research Institute and the Ethics Institute, Mr. Matthew Sparks, representing COSATU and NEHAU, the biggest federation in the country, Ms. Yoliswa Makasi, the former Director General, but now representing New South Institute, which carries a huge membership. Mr. Dan Snell, representing South African Teachers Union, which represent big numbers in that sector of education. Mr. Chulanzuza, who will be making individual submission as a South African citizen, who have been allowed to do so. Let me express our appreciation to all members of the public and the civil society movements who have written their submissions and also made their requests to do oral representations before this select committee. This is highly welcomed and commendable on the side of entrenching our democracy to ascertain that members of the public are fully involved in the lawmaking of our country. We also wish to inform the meeting that on the 11th of October 2024, the Minister and the Director General came to before the committee the select committee and briefed us on the public administration, on the bill, objective of the two bills, and proposed amendments thereof. They informed us that during these deliberations, these two bills were initiated during the sixth administration and passed through consultative processes at the levels of the cabinet, bargaining councils, and tabled to Parliament on the 31st of March 2023. Can I request that I close my window here? I requested these colleagues to come back to my area because I'm having
Recording in progress.
I'm sorry for that. I think the sound is now better. So these bills were processed, as I've already mentioned, that in the sixth administration, and they were passed through the Cabinet Bargaining Council and tabled to Parliament on the 31st of March 2023. The bills were adopted by National Assembly on the 14th of February 2024. These two bills were revived and referred to the Select Committee on Cooperative Governance and Public Administration on the 30th of July 2024, following the national and provincial elections. Honourable members, we wish to remind all of us that as the Select Committee, we advertised, we placed this on parliamentary website and social media accounts, requesting members of the public to partake in this process. So we must also indicate that oral hearings are provided to afford the opportunity to the members of the public and civil society movements to make their representation before this Select Committee. Then immediate after that, we'll meet with the minister and the department to come and respond to all the issues that you would have raised as civil society organizations, as well as individuals as part of the citizens of South Africa. So we'll be engaging the departments and receive in finalizing the processes of this bill. With those few words, we wish to welcome you all. We are now going to start our first representation by welcoming Mr. Evan Bula to come, who will represent local government advocates and learning networks. You are given 25 minutes, 30 minutes to make your representation. Over to you, Mr. Bula.
Good morning. Can you all hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Good. Nice to see you again, Mr. Kawunda. I hope everything's well. And
yeah, I will request that you also show your face on the video. Our rules require that we must see you so that we can be certain that you are not talking to the robot.
Okay. Yeah. And welcome to the other members of the committee. I also want to place a special thanks to Moses Mamela, who's been very supportive and throughout this whole process. Thank you very much. It's good to see public servants committed like that and taking the work seriously. Can I share my screen now?
Yes, you can share your screen.
Okay.
I think you've been given the rights. No?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is it visible now?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay. The network actually comprises of 80 members now. We have grown quite a bit. I'm a retired professional town clerk, but I still have got a very, very strong affiliation to local government. We do a lot of policy interventions with all levels of government. I'm the coordinator for the last 2 years, and we put in submissions to National Parliament as well. The network is led by the Democracy Development Program, which is very well known. It's funded by the German consortium. Okay, the bill itself is very important to the work that we do because we do diagnostic reports on local government as well. And I've submitted 2 different versions of the white paper on local government. I haven't had a thorough look at the amendments that have been adopted since it's now come to the National Council of Provinces. But the one area we have a problem with Section 35, which clarifies the role of the Public Service Commission in grievance procedures. We are concerned that there's no mention of time period to lodge grievances. We're not sure whether this is contained in the documents as it stands, because it's important to have time periods, as we have seen that most problems start with the grievance and disciplinary process not being adhered to with timelines. I've also raised, does this apply to the disciplinary processes as well? Because what we have seen is that staff are suspended for a few years on full pay, which is not really value for money for ratepayers and for the taxpayers. Okay, so our recommendation is that there must be strict time periods for grievances and disciplinary actions, and this will help to resolve long-standing efficiencies. That's my presentation on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pula. You've done very well in terms of time allocated to you. And we'll now allow members just to ask if there are any questions of clarities. No comments, members. We are still going to have our turn to deal with these representations. But if we have any question to Mr. Pula, you can raise such questions or clarities. No political statements, no general comments, but questions, clarities on what has just been presented. If there is no hand, then we can proceed. We wish to thank you, Mr. Pula, for your representation, and we are going to be processing, as I've alluded, to the fact that this committee will have a session with the department to respond to each and every submission that you have made. So we really commit ourselves that we'll do exactly that. So there are no hands or there are no questions on what we have just presented. We thank you, but you can remain so that you can also hear other presenters on what they will be presenting. You are at liberty to remain in the meeting.
Okay, just a point of clarity. When do I do my presentation on the public administration management?
Yes, we are moving to that now, yeah. No, I nearly omitted you on the second one.
Okay.
At least you are very sharp to pick up that. Otherwise, I would have closed your submission. Thank you very much. You can move to the second one.
Okay, thank you. Is my screen visible?
It's not
right now.
Yeah, it's now visible. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our key concerns were that national and provincial government would work. The job functions would be more closely aligned. However, the local government, the duties are very much time dependent. You know, things have to happen in real time. So if people are seconded from from national and provincial government, they would have quite a problem adapting to local government. We just know that the whole system is completely different. And it's been a lot of politicization in the national and provincial governments. Also, the staff transfers, let me just get this up here. as I've said, the local government demands greater efficiency, quick turnaround times, high competency, and stress resilience. We're not sure if these have been taken into account. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of service delivery problems. And now, when we're talking about transfers, will this be temporary measures or permanent? And if there's permanent transfers, this will create a vacuum in the donor structure, lead to inefficiencies, require retraining of new staff. And also, will this be done with the consent of the affected employees? We assume that those concerns might be taken care of the labor structures, and we didn't want to, extend ourselves into those boundaries. And we just want to know, will civil society be permanently included in all deliberations? And I forgot to thank you all for having this deliberation, because what we have seen is that although public participation is entrenched in our constitution, there's a move to have a procedural engagement, as omitting substantial engagement. And it's good to see that, that this kind of engagements are happening, and we'd like to be included going forward into submissions of this kind. I've made this very, very brief. I don't like to take a lot of time. I just believe that, you have to make your points quickly instead of just hogging time. Quality is more important than quantity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pula. Let's also allow members on the second presentation, if there are questions or clarities, not comments. I don't see any hand, members. It indicates that you are all covered. We wish to thank you for having taken your time to prepare and come forward to bring these inputs before the select committee. We take them with that level of seriousness, and also be making sure that the department does respond to what you have submitted. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now move to the second presenter. Honorable members, the second presenter will be Dr. Sharaman Gilbert, representing Public Affairs Research Institute and Ethics Institute. I'll apologize if I pronounce your surname incorrectly. My sincere apology for that. Over to you, Doc.
Thank you, Chair, and no worries about the surname. It's a strange surname. I'm going to be doing a joint presentation today with Christobi from the Ethics Institute. I'm Sarah Many-Gibbet from the Public Affairs Research Institute, and we have been following the bill for some time now, and made submissions a couple of years ago when the call for submissions was opened in the National Assembly. I'm going to share my screen now, and if you'll let me know whether you can see it clearly.
Yes, it's now visible.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so just a little bit of background. PARI is a research institute that is attached to UJ, and I run the state reform program there. We do research and policy development on issues of public sector reform, state capacity, and state-citizen relationships. And we have often partnered with other civil society organizations and research institutes on submissions to Parliament in this area. And we are joined by the Ethics Institute, who I think some of you may know as an organization that does a lot of really good work around the question of organizational ethics in both the public and the private sectors. So as I mentioned, we've been following the bill for quite a while and previously made submissions with the Public Service Accountability Monitor and Corruption Watch. We have studied the bill closely, and we know that there have been some changes made from the previous version, and we appreciate Parliament engaging with the submissions from that previous process and making some minor but important changes. We are broadly very supportive of the bill. We think that it could do a bit more to support the vision of public sector reform outlined in the NDP and the professionalisation framework, but we would certainly like to see this bill passed. So I'm going to take you through our presentation now, which focuses primarily on the issue of the political administrative interface and the regulation of that. So I'm going to start with a bit of background as to why we think the bill is so important in this regard. Essentially, both the NDP and the professionalisation framework have brought attention to the fact that we need reforms to create more stable and productive relations between senior officials on the one hand and politicians and executives on the other. There needs to be, first of all, greater clarity with regards to those roles, and then mechanisms to prevent inappropriate political overreach into administrative issues, operational matters. And of course, here we are thinking particularly of procurement, which, as we know from the Zondo Commission, was a major source of focus for capture activities. So broad executive powers of appointment and removal, so in the HR space without effective checks and balances, have allowed patronage and corruption considerations to pervade administrations in many parts of the state. I'm now going to hand over to Chris, and Chris is going to share some data from their public sector ethics survey, which they run every couple of years. Chris, are you ready to join?
I am. Thank you very much, Sarah. Hi, colleagues. I'm Chris Dobie from the Ethics Institute, and I'm responsible for the public sector component of our public sector work. So maybe what I want to do is just say a little bit about why this is so important for us as the Ethics Institute. We obviously do a lot of work trying to promote an ethical culture in the public sector. And you know, when we do the analysis, it's like, so let's say there's late coming. Why is there late coming? Because there's not enough discipline being applied. Why is there not a... So you can take that down and down and down, and you get to the root cause. And at the end of the day, the root cause is about not enough stable, effective, and ethical leadership in the public service. So we, together with the Public Service Commission, developed this this values-driven public sector flywheel, where we said, okay, so what is it that we need to make sure that we have a values-driven public sector? And the first thing that you can see at the center there is a common purpose and values. We need to be all pulling in the same direction. Then we need to be sure that we have stable, ethical, and effective leadership. And the stability is really, really important, and I'll get to that now. Then those leaders need to appoint competent and professional staff. The leaders and the managers need to provide direction and accountability. A very big concern among public servants is that there isn't sufficient accountability in the public service. Then, if you do those things right, we say there should be successful delivery, which will lead to pride and staff morale, and then you can attract more professional staff, from which then you select again. And that's the flywheel concept, that this thing will start promoting itself and driving itself if we can get that right. But at the moment, things are breaking down at the stable, ethical, and effective leadership. Sarah, if you can go to the next slide. So this is just some interesting data, obviously a while old now, but during President Zuma's first 100 months, he made 126 changes to his national executive, which consisted of 74 people. On average, he made cabinet changes every 8.6 months. And that led to the fact that 172 people held position of DGs in the 38 departments. So on average, 4.5 DGs per department, and DGs only serve 22 months on average. Now, colleagues, you can imagine that if you had any institution, public or private sector, and you change the CEO every 22 months, it simply isn't going to be able to perform and do what it does. We're going to have to redo our values alignment. We're going to, it's a stop, start, and there's no way that we can be effective. And so we think it's really important that we start to review the appointment processes for our HODs, DGs, and municipal managers even in our organizations. So that we can bring that stability back. We're not saying that politicians are bad and officials are good, but by nature, a political system is a lot more unstable because we've got the election process and there's factionalism and things that happen, where a bureaucratic organization does need more stability. Sarah, if you can carry on. So this is just from our engagements in the public sector. Some of the verbatim comments, and this one is particularly apt because it does tell you about the frustrations that your administrative leaders sit with. So it says some of the political decisions taken undermine us as administrative leaders. For example, on appointment of staff, there's clear criteria and credentials, but politicians then push in their positions for political reasons. This creates a problem. In the administration, you have people who have qualified to do their jobs and those who are there to push for a political agenda. Those who are there for an agenda don't adhere to policies, etc. They create chaos and they always have the upper hand in terms of politics. So things happen despite what you say the policy or the process is. These people undermine the process. They get away with it because they are protected. So colleagues, you can see it destabilizes the process. It creates loopholes that make corruption a lot easier, and it makes accountability a lot more difficult. So we also, in part of the local government ethical leadership initiative, did a survey, and we asked people, to what extent do you agree the following undermines ethical leadership in your municipality? And the top thing there is the appointment of officials with political connections rather than skills. Makes it really difficult for people to lead ethically in their organizations. And you can see there, in organizations that have adverse or disclaimer audits, it's significantly worse than those with unqualified or clean audits. So that's why we support the view that Sarah is going to be giving, that it's really, really important that we look at the appointment processes of DGs and other senior managers in the public sector. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. So, I mean, the bill is clearly an attempt to begin to tackle this sort of thorny issue. Ideally, executive authority should be defining policy and exercising oversight over implementation and obviously disciplining senior administrators if required. And then administrators and senior officials should be implementing that policy, providing policy advice within the framework of the Constitution and, in line with the democratic mandate and coming from election processes. And for senior officials, especially HODs, to play this role, they need the appropriate authority to manage their departments. The NDP and many other commentators and the DPSA have been bringing, have noted the sort of misalignment between the fact that in the PFMA and also now under other legislation, accounting officers are now subject to special duties and sanctions for maladministration in the departments. And yet at the same time, under the Public Service Act, those accounting officers as HODs don't have the original legislative authority or powers necessary for properly staffing their departments, structuring them and organizing them, and therefore the appropriate authority to prevent maladministration. And this position is becoming more acute in a way. Parliament has recently passed laws expanding mechanisms for the sanctioning of accounting officers. This includes the changes regarding material irregularities under the Public Audit Act, and increasingly court liability on accounting officers for their conduct in the management of departments. So there's a kind of growing distance between the powers that and that they are actually given in practice, which in our view are not sufficient, and then the stringent responsibilities they have as accounting officers. Not only do we think that this has the potential to further contribute to tension in the political administrative interface, but it potentially also creates increasingly untenable risks for HODs. And I know that there are former HODs in this meeting today who may be able to say more in that regard. So the bill introduces very welcome reforms to begin to address these kinds of issues. It more clearly delineates the responsibilities of executive authorities and HOD to responsibility for the administration, appointment, broader HR of a national and provincial department to HODs. And we think, as I've mentioned, that this is a really important necessary move. We support the bill and we would like to see it passed, but we do think that the bill is in some senses incomplete, that it hasn't captured the kinds of full range of reforms we would like to see. Our sense is this is because, the bill makes no mention, and perhaps there will be regulations that will address this at a later stage. But at the moment, the bill makes no mention of any kinds of safeguards for the appointment processes for HODs themselves. There's still no kind of check on full political discretion with regards to selection committees for HODs. And by this notion of a kind of check, what we mean is that you would have people on selection committees that beyond politicians and the bureaucrats that they can appoint, to include people who are independent of political interests and, of course, should be public interest minded and have the knowledge and skills to support with appropriate selection. And then, of course, politicians should still have that final say in appointment. And the NDP and the professionalisation framework tackle this issue, and they've proposed a role for the Public Service Commission and a new head of the administration, the DG and the presidency, to play a role as a check in selection processes. But the bill is silent on this particular role. It does establish the head of the presidency, the head of the public service formally, but it doesn't give a role to that office in respect of this potential role in supporting appointment processes and performance management of HODs. So I suppose our concern in sum is that there's still a lot of room for sort of inappropriate political appointments of HODs, and then for the HODs to carry those kind of political, inappropriate, I don't mean the good politics, inappropriate political decisions down into the administration. So as I've just mentioned, we welcome the fact that the head of the presidency, what's referred to as the head of the public service in the NDP, has been formally
Sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Gibbet. Maybe you can switch off.
In the amendment,
sorry,
we do think that this. Oh, yes.
Yes, maybe you can switch off your video because we seem to be losing you in terms of your network. If you can switch off the video, then maybe it will improve the signal.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, it sounds better.
Okay. Did you lose quite a bit of the last few slides, the content? Do I need to go over it again?
No,
just your last point, Sarah.
Yeah, the two last points.
Okay. I'm not sure exactly where I lost you, but essentially we're concerned that the bill could have done more to introduce a more robust process for appointments of HODs and introducing these kinds of checks in those appointment processes that are envisioned in the NDP. And the professionalisation framework. But we are pleased to see that the head of the presidency, the DG in the presidency, has officially been made the head of the public administration, and that the roles of that office have been more clearly defined. As I said, we would like to have seen a formal role given to that office in performance management of HODs, management of career incidences, and support for appointment processes, as the NDP and the professionalisation framework framework envisioned, but we are nonetheless supportive of the clauses. And we would also ideally like to see, given the important role that this office plays and could play, even further functions, we would like to see the elaboration of a fit and proper standard for the appointment of people into that office, that DG position. The amendments also contain prohibitions on the holding of public, so I should say a political office. Clause 16 of the bill inserts a new section in this regard, prohibiting an HOD and I think those reporting directly to them from holding political office in a political party. We're supportive of this. We think it's a really important move. Ideally, we would like to see it covering the whole of the senior management service, but we agree that it should not cover all public servants, only those in the senior echelons of the state. And then another point, we're not sure if we're reading this section correctly, but we think there may be a slight gap in the Act as the amendments are currently written. Clause 11 of the bill amends Section 17 to devolve responsibility for discipline from the executive authority to the HOD, and I've inserted the wording over there. Now that clause has been amended, the bill doesn't appear to cater for the dismissal of HODs themselves. So if you read Section 17(1)(b) with Section 16(b)(1), the power to dismiss HODs is assigned to the President or the Premier, for national and provincial respectively, but only for cases of misconduct. It's our reading that it doesn't confer powers to dismiss an HOD for incapacity, incapacity due to ill health or injury, poor performance or operational requirements as catered for in the Labour Relations Act. And we wonder if Parliament could just look at those clauses and get a sense of whether they think there is a lacuna there. We have proposed some legal drafting, some text that might resolve that issue, but just to flag it. And then on the very last point, we haven't done a formal submission on PALMER. We did a couple of years ago when public comment was called for in the National Assembly. We are broadly supportive of the Act. And we note that there were some only minor changes made from the previous version. We paid particularly close attention to Section 8, regulating, doing business with the state and so on. And we're very supportive of those clauses. And we just note that PALMER sort of initially intended to create sort of a single public service, which we understand is something in line with the Constitution, so not in any way eroding the vision of the Constitution with regards to the autonomy of local government. But we do think that amendments to PALMER potentially could have created the space for greater synergy and coherence across different sections of the public administration and greater oversight for the conduct of the public administration that hasn't been fully used, but we are broadly supportive of PALMER. I'm going to end there, and we're happy to take any questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gilbert and Chris, for your representations. Honorable members, can I check with you if there are any clarities that you need? I see two hands. Honorable Peter from Eastern Cape and Honorable Dr. Skirkoher from Free State. Let's take those two hands. Honorable Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to the team as well. Chair, I've got only two questions to the committee. According to your own experience, so what is the main challenge you faced as you deal with these bills? Secondly, typical example, you propose these bills, same politicians undermine these bills by not honoring it. So what new mechanism are you coming with based on the dishonoring of these bills? Did you see these bills being honored by these politicians? If no, what other new mechanism did you want to inform this committee about your major challenge you faced through these years? Lastly, can you share to this committee with your challenges, with your experiences you go through all these years? Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you. They are making these representations so that we as politicians, we consider them when we pass these laws, but they'll answer the frustrations as members of the public and the civic organizations that they are faced with when things are not going right. In your question, Honorable Peter, they will answer you. Honorable Skirkocher.
Thank you, Chairperson. My question goes, I think it's more or less to what Mr. Dobie, if I'm not mistaken, it was Chris that presented with Sarah. You mentioned about that presentation where you showed about the municipal budgets and what's happening, and that is actually exactly what's happening, is because these people are politically appointed and catered appointment has ruined local government. I just want to find out, how would you address this? Because yes, we need to appoint officials that can do the job and they are qualified, and we don't sit with up to 257 municipalities. 116 of them are unfunded because of those kind of things. But how would you bridge the gap to ensure that there is proper political oversight? Because if you completely remove the politicians, these people that might be appointed within, let's say, a certain political party control this municipality, and these people are still infiltrated. Now you don't have oversight of, let's say, the opposition parties. So how would you suggest, Mr. Dobie, to bridge that gap? Because we still need, that's what the NCOP is. We are there to do oversight specifically on more on local government. But how do we bridge that gap to do that? But yeah, thank you for that presentation. It's spot on what's happening in local government, and that's completely done through catered employment. So I just want to see how can we then incorporate this in this bill to ensure that there's oversight, but we have skilled people running local government that actually is the sphere of government that provide services to the people. Thank you.
Thank you. The next member is Honorable Ceza. I'm hoping that members are not going to be tempted to try and in your questioning to put your views. Let's allow the presenters to present, then we'll consider our views when we engage. Thank you.
No, that's
you
later
can
on.
proceed, Honorable Ceza.
Thank you, Chair. No, that's later on with the department, Chair. It's just to answer to ask questions straight to the presenter pertaining to what she is now presenting. Just for clarity, Chair, on that flywheel, I was quite interested when you presented that flywheel. It almost reminded me of that cycle of project management. And then you cited pride and staff morale. We have a problem in local government of staff morale, but we also have a staff retention problem and an institutional memory problem. And therefore professionalization of local government. How will what is your view on in terms of local government that is plagued with resignations when it comes to officials that are implicated in Section 106 investigations or forensic investigations emerging in another department as something else, or you find that an administrator who comes through an administrator Section 139 of the Constitution, then she or he emerges as a CFO whereas we don't have a close-up out report of that particular process. And last one, just on procurement, one of the things that is exacerbating procurement in local government is the issue of procurement. Sometimes it's policy issues that we are stuck with in local government. Will you perhaps say something on that, and how do you hope that this bill will actually turn around that situation in terms of the status quo of procurement? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Let me hand over to the presenters. They are not obliged to give responses if they don't have, but where they have solutions, they are at liberty to present them. Thank you. Over to you, Doc.
Chris, can I suggest you start and I'll follow up?
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, and the first question, I'm not sure that it was posed directly at us, and I don't have a view on the matter. Sarah, I don't know if you want to come in on that one, but for Dr. Schierkogel, the question you're asking is what do we propose to stabilize the appointment processes, or the creating more skills? And yeah, I mean, we refer to destructive deployment practices, not taking a view on the deployment thing, but that certainly there's abuse of deployment practices, and where the wrong people are appointed, and Sarah can come in more on the technicalities, but the proposal, as I understand, is that we're saying that the head of the public service and the Public Service Commission should come in and form a selection committee of professionals, public leaders and the like. So they form a selection committee. The CVs come to the selection committee, and that selection committee then, so it's an independent selection committee. So we're bringing independence into the process. And obviously, the Public Service Commission needs to be protected to a certain extent to ensure that that remains independent. And that the people that then go through that selection process, the top 3 candidates, for example, might be put forward to the minister, and the minister can make a decision on one that is aligned to obviously what they want to see in a leader of their department, but thereby one depoliticizes it to an extent, and you try and ensure at least that the person who's there is skilled and qualified to do the job. Sarah, have I got that roughly in line with how you set out the process? So the idea isn't to take away oversight, or to make oversight weaker. The idea is simply to clarify the line between, well, to professionalize the administration. Yeah, it's to make sure that the administration remains more professional in the way it does things and less political in the way it does things. I think that's the one very strong suggestion. I'm going to stop there on that one. Then, Honorable Cesar, yeah, you talk about staff retention challenges and the like, and yeah, one of the quotes that we have from one of our surveys, the person says, the message that comes through, and this is specifically local government, but I'm sure it applies in other sectors as well, or in the public service as well. The message we're getting is that the doors of employment are closed. If we want to progress through the ranks, and that's what a professional administration does. A professional administration allows you to come in at a certain, like you prove your worth, you go up, you go up, you go up. What happens now is that you go up, and then there's terminology for this. People get parachuted in. Now there's someone above you, and you get frustrated and you leave. So in other words, we're losing our competent public servants, and yeah, people get frustrated and we have staff turnover. I want to answer the last question around procurement and say we've got very good procurement policies. The problem we have is that, and we talk about hard controls and soft controls. A hard control is a policy. It says when procurement happens, we follow this policy and this process so that we remain objective, independent, transparent, and the like. But the soft controls is the environment within which it happens. Now, if there's a culture whereby a politician can say, please don't use that process, or bypass the process, or tweak the process so that my person wins, then that hard control means nothing. And that's, again, if we professionalize the administration, we're hoping that we can bring the value back into our very, very good policies that we do have. But it's the culture component that breaks it down. Thanks.
I'm just going to follow up a little bit and reiterate some of Chris's points. So just to be clear on how we see a potential reform process working ideally, there are different components to getting the political administrative interface more stable and more clearly delineating those roles and getting politicians to play the appropriate role in oversight versus administrators, focusing on day-to-day delivery. I think the first move is that we needed greater clarity in the regulatory framework. The question of whether people are compliant with that is a different one. It's an important one, but we do need the right regulatory framework in place. We think this bill assists with that by making those roles clearer. We think it assists with that by more clearly outlining the roles of politicians as oversight and policy setters and broad strategic vision for the departments, and then administrators for providing some advice around that, but for focusing on the planning and the staffing needs and the operational requirements to deliver on that set of election promises and programs. So we think that this bill really, really does that. And in our view, the kind of clarity this bill creates assists with that oversight function by politicians. They can focus more on that role and leave the operational matters to be dealt with by administrators. So that oversight role remains incredibly important. Then we think there's the question of how you appoint your HODs, which is very important and which isn't tackled by this bill. We had hoped it would be, but maybe that's still coming. And we think that process needs to be more robust. We don't want to see it removed from politicians. I think it's important that on the selection committees, executive authorities, staff members they feel could support their views and so on are part of that process. And politicians must always be the ones to finally make the appointment and make the decision. So the selection committee provides their sense of who they think are good candidates based on a objective as a possible process in which there are clear criteria, in which they're evaluating candidates against and so on. They give that shortlist to the political leaders and the political leadership, in the case here, president or premier, etc., makes their final choice. So we think that must remain. But the selection committee could be far more robustly constituted, including an independent check that can support to make sure that process is not subject to inappropriate political interference. So we think that's the next move. And then, of course, you would need to get performance management working really well so that the politicians can feel confident that they are being served by HODs who are committed to the programs and mandate of the department. So we see these as kind of steps in the process of reform that need to be very carefully paced and sequenced appropriately to begin to get us to the point where we have a more stable permanent professional civil service on the one hand and politicians who can focus on strategy setting and oversight. And then of course there's a question of the tenure of DGs. I know that that's also something the NDP proposed, and we've previously supported extending the tenure of DGs and still do, but we think it needs to come later down the line when we've got these kinds of reforms in place first and improved appointment processes, and then maybe extend questions of tenure. To Honourable Member, there's your question around procurement. I mean, we see this bill as potentially assisting with that question. I mean, we know there's the question of procurement policy, and then there's the fact that procurement is subject to constant corruption. We're currently doing research in Johannesburg and other municipalities in Gauteng, where service delivery here has declined quite substantially, in large part due to the paralysis in contracting. Because every time there's new council and it changes so often, they cancel contracts, it gets reissued, they get tampered with, the incumbents are not trusted by the new incumbents, they cancel the contract and so on. And I don't think that just pertains to local government. Our research in some provincial education departments has shown that that kind of churn with changes in political leadership can lead to paralysis in contracting. So more clearly differentiating the sort of oversight and strategy role of the political and leaders and the operational requirements, and making sure that that those roles are very separate, I think is really important. This bill does some work in moving in that direction, so I think it does partially address that problem around problems in procurement, but obviously it's a much bigger issue. I don't know whether I've answered all of the questions, but thank you very much for the questions.
Thank you very much, Doc. You have covered all the questions. We wish to thank you for having prepared to come forward with your representations to try and improve these proposed amendments. And we are looking forward to continue to engage with you. But you can still remain in the platform to hear others when they present. Thank you very much. We are now moving, honorable members, to the next presenter, Mr. Matthew Parks from COSATU and NEHAWU, to put their perspective on the bills. Over to you, Comrade Parks.
Morning, Chair, morning, members. Thanks for giving us space just to kind of share our views on both bills. Just forgive my technological challenges, Chair. I'm a little bit technologically backward. Hopefully members can see the screen share.
Yes, it does appear now.
Okay.
You can just put your face as well. I don't know whether it's my gadget, whether you are showing your face.
Hopefully, it's we're catching up with technology, Chairperson. Sometimes it overtakes us. But
okay.
No, thanks, Chair. Thanks to members for giving us space as COSATU on behalf of ourselves, our federation and affiliates. We want just to cover both the PARMA and the PSA bills. For us, they're quite important bills. In essence, we support both bills. We had engaged extensively on them at NEDLAC.
You can just double click on your screen so that you remove those. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
sorry.
it's better. Thank you.
No, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair. So we had engaged quite extensively on both bills, Chair, at NEDLAC and the Portfolio Committee. We're quite pleased that it's now before the Select Committee. Initially, Chair, 2022, when we first engaged in the bills at NEDLAC, we were very concerned about many of the provisions. We had really strong reservations, objections to quite a few of them. But after some quite robust discussion with colleagues in the department at NEDLAC, and then later cleaning up a little bit in the Portfolio Committee, we're very pleased that we managed to resolve all of our concerns on the basis of just defending and respecting workers' constitutional rights, their labor rights, to make sure the bills are in line with those legislation and the Constitution. But I think, Chair, also to support, the fight against state capture and corruption, and of course also to ensure we help to build and to capacitate a developmental state. And we think these bills speak to all of those issues. And I think, Chair, we do want to really appreciate the efforts on the genuine engagements by colleagues from the Department of Public Service and Administration, the previous ministry, to really engage in good faith on these issues, and I think finally to ensure we have got a enhanced and strengthened bills, including also during the Portfolio Committee, when we had to work quite closely with SALGA, with IMATU, with SAMU, around some of the local government issues. And I think this, this spirit of openness and willingness to engage and to address workers' concerns by government, by parliament, is appreciated. And I think for us is quite critical if we are, to address our quite complicated issues as a society. Chair, just getting to some of the specific clauses. So under the Palmer Bill, so I won't go to all the clauses, but just the ones which are, important to us, or we're really focused on. Other ones are largely straightforward, common sense, and so forth. So on the transfer of employees bills, we were very concerned at the beginning that we felt it was simply a blank check, and that was really open to abuse, unintended consequences. The transfer of employees is a matter of great concern to workers, to their families, etc. But we think, Chair, if it's handled well, it can boost morale, it can support family stability. Workers are obviously mothers and fathers and husbands and wives. It can also help to boost workplace productivity as well. But again, if it's handled badly, it can have the opposite effect, and it can result in unnecessary litigation for everybody affected. So, we had a lot of discussion on this, and we're pleased that we're able to find each other. We managed to reach consensus with government on the provisions provided for the transfer of employees, and so that's reflected in the bill before the Select Committee that the consent of the affected employee is required. The transfer wouldn't cause a break in service. That's obviously affect pension or other things. It wouldn't affect the conditions of service being negatively affected unless there was a specific agreement from that employee. So this is a matter that we're quite concerned about, but we're glad that we found each other and the provisions in the bill are fully supported. We think they're fair and they're progressive. Chair, on the issue of doing business with the state, we support those provisions. We think that when we have this cancer of corruption affecting every fabric of society, not just the state, but the private sector, civil society, it's across the board. Nothing's left untouched. We think the provisions in the bills are quite useful, and it's simple. If you're employed by the state, then you can't do business with the state. One has a choice in life. But again, these are critical for you to deal with the issue of state capture and corruption. And the public depends upon a state which is really geared towards the services of working class communities, of the poor, and it shouldn't be seen to be a center of entrepreneurship, of corruption, of state capture, of javelin throwing, etc. We think that the provision on this very important aspect, the progressive, they're going to not resolve, but they provide useful step forward in terms of dealing with the culture of state capture. And often we've all too often seen a chance supply chain where officials give tenders to themselves, to their friends, to their families. We've also seen at times officials allocating very lucrative contracts and resigning to join this company. So we think these provisions are a useful step in dealing with that issue. Chair, on the unjustifiable disparities in the public administration, so there's a clause which try to empower the state to deal with those, to remove them. We've been raising this for quite some time, Chair, as COSATU. And to be fair to the state, it had to integrate various administrations in '94, and of course there's many entities, SOEs, municipalities, and so forth. But there is a real problem. We have nurses and teachers, police officers, other public servants who work under extremely difficult conditions, often for very low pay. But we've seen at times senior management, the public service, the entities especially, local government to a lesser extent, getting really paid quite exorbitant salaries. And so we think, these provisions are useful. To give you one example, Chair, you have the executive management of some of the entities, like the Road Traffic Management Corporation, many others, which are not really that complex or that strategic. But the management there would get paid more than the president of the entire nation, more than a minister, let alone a DG to whom they are meant to account. So I think, Chair, and we must also just bear in mind that, we remain the world's most unequal society. We've seen worsening trends in that regard. So I think for us, Chair, this provision is quite useful to empower the department to begin to reduce these disparities. Number one, it's going to help to ensure more coherence in the state, to save money, which is often we just don't have. But I think also to try to, even if it's symbolically, try to address our levels of inequality and so forth. But when you have money, it can really be aimed to those frontline workers like police officers and nurses, not to executives of entities, etc. So, Chair, we welcome the provision in this regard, and we think they're a useful step forward. We do need further discussions, Chair, about how to really ensure a single kind of wage framework for the entire state, how to ensure a single collective bargaining process for the entire state, almost part of this ongoing longer term discussion. On the issue of the ministerial coordination for bargaining council for collective agreements, we support these provisions, which require a firm mandate for the ministerial committee for public service wage negotiations, and also require consultations with the Minister for Finance, DPSA, COGTA, for local government collective bargaining as well. We think we found the right balance on both of them. We think they're common sense, but Chair, we recall that in 2020, that wage agreement, which had been signed by ministers, was then later taken to court by Treasury and Cabinet, who said it didn't have the sign off by Cabinet. That caused a real crisis in the public service. It undermined collective bargaining, labour market stability in the state, and that obviously has an impact upon service delivery. So we think, Chair, it does make sense that when ministers engage in the public service negotiations, they do have a mandate from Cabinet. Otherwise, negotiations can't take place in good faith. And equally, Chair, we think that the right balance is made with regards to local government, which was dealt with in the Portfolio Committee, that the ministers should be consulted, as has been the practice, but obviously recognizing local government is a separate sphere of government, so to speak. But there is a need for the balance. We think the bill does provide it. Chair, on one of the very sensitive issues, just getting towards the end, on the limiting of the political rights of HODs and officials reporting to them, we think the bill's provisions find the right balance. This is a sensitive matter. It's a constitutional matter. And obviously it needs to be handled delicately and in line with the Constitution. The initial drafting of the bill in 2022, or the second drafting of it, sought to ban all public servants from holding office in a political party. So that wasn't just a DG or a commissioner of police or SARS, but it included a security guard or a cleaner or a driver. We felt it just went overboard. And we thought it went from a surgical limitation of constitutional rights, which is allowed under the Constitution, to an outright ban of an entire portion of society's political and constitutional rights. So, Chair, we're pleased with the provisions of the bill, which simply returns to the original limitation, which is to HODs and to those officials reporting directly to them. So that's your DDGs, etc. And we think, Chair, it makes sense. You wouldn't want a commissioner of police or commissioner of SARS, for example, to be holding office in a political party. But I don't think we should be concerned about a cleaner or a security guard. We think the clause before yourselves, members, are fair. They're common sense and they're constitutional. It's also useful, Chair, that we were able to find this consensus at NEDLAC with the department because the Municipal Systems Amendment Act, which had inspired these amendments, had a similar clause, and that was declared unconstitutional by the Labour and the Constitutional Courts more recently, about 2 months ago, for the Concord. And so the Concord decision is in line with what's in the bill, that such limitation must be very specific to HODs, to the senior management. It shouldn't be a blank check. So I think it's useful that we have cleaned up and avoided that unnecessary distraction. Chair, just the last clause on the recovery in the PSA bill, the recovery of overpayments to officials, it's legally correct, it's accepted, etc. It does need to be handled a little bit delicately just to avoid unintended consequences, where you could, for example, if somebody was overpaid 20,000 Rand and then you wanted to recover it in a single lump sum payment from a nurse, that could have unintended consequence of plunging that family into hardship. So we're quite pleased that, after discussions and some useful drafting by the department and the Portfolio Committee, we've got, before the committee in the clauses, a useful kind of guide for HR how to do so, to take into account the circumstances that affected a person, allow them representations about the schedule upon which they can afford to make the repayment and so forth. And again, that's in line with what SARS does, etc. So, Chair, we're comfortable with the clause in that regard, and we think it makes sense. It protects the needs of the department to be repaid, overpaid monies, but also just ensures a process which is fair and reasonable and rational. So, Chair, in conclusion, we welcome both the PALMA and the PSA bills. We feel they both are fair and rational. This has been a long journey for us as COSATU over the past, 3-4 years at the PSCBC, at NEDLAC, and the Portfolio Committee. But we are pleased we have consensus on all the clauses in terms of the drafts before the Select Committee. And I think, Chair, we're really pleased that, the department really went out of its way to to engage and to find solutions, and some in the portfolio committee as well. So I just, Chair, just in closing, we support these bills. We urge the select committee to support them as well. We think they address many important issues, and we look forward to their being endorsed and adopted by Parliament and coming into effect. Chair. So yeah, hopefully I stuck to the times, Chair. And thanks for giving us space, Chair members. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parks, for your representation. Members, honorable members, are there any clarities, questions that you wish to direct to Mr. Parks? I see one hand, Honorable Ceza.
Oh, thank you very much, Chairperson. A few on single public service wage framework. Given the deeply unequal structure of our economy, to Mr. Parks, Matthew, given the deeply unequal structure of our economy and the public sector wage gaps between national, provincial, and local levels, does COSATU believe that the bill meaningfully addresses or worsens the crisis of fragmented wage regime, especially in rural and under-resourced municipalities? On political rights, the bill seeks to limit political rights of heads of departments and those reporting directly to them. Does COSATU think that this could be perhaps similar to the regime stated in Section 57, if my memory serves well, of the Municipal Systems Act, for junior managers that are reporting directly to them, to the municipal manager, which must be on a permanent basis? What is the view in terms of the constitutional rights of workers in the public sector, especially given the progressive tradition of trade union and worker activism in our history? And then in terms of, I've asked the Municipal Systems Act in terms of...
Yeah, that was the last one.
Was the last one.
Yeah, thank you.
Before you say so.
Okay, let's, there are no further hands. Let's allow Mr. Parks to respond if we have responses.
Yes, no, thanks, Chair. Thanks to Honorable Ceza. I think the members raising important issues. Some are assisted in the bill. Some obviously require longer term process, discussion, etc. The single public service wage framework, it's a delicate issue, it's a sensitive issue. The clauses in the bill specifically which touch upon this issue, the clauses empowering the department to deal with unjustified disparities. That for us is a useful clause, because until this point, we don't think there has been anything in law to really empower the department to begin to do that. And if you look at the public service wage regime, it's not as bad as other parts of the state. You've got about 16 different bands. There has been some effort to reduce it. There is still some issues. If you look what a police officer, a constable makes about 180,000 Rand a year, barely enough even to afford a house or a car. But you look what a DG earns, more than 10 times that. That is a problem. But that's a problem if you look into the public sector entities where there is no structure. It is literally a wild west where, a variety of the entities, you've seen real abuses. There was an interesting article in this past week's Sunday Times where it showed that in some of the entities reported into the Department of Transport, where the boards are approved 100% increases for the executive management team. And those senior managers earn more than the president of the country, let alone the minister or the DG to whom they account. And that doesn't make sense, Chair, when government has been complaining about the wage bill, but has turned a blind eye to real abuses here. So we think, Chair, this clause is just a step forward, a single step forward in the right direction to begin to have a single public service wage framework for the entire state. We think ideally you also need to have a single collective bargaining process for the entire state. It will take time, but I think, Chair, these kind of clauses, which are foundational do begin to nudge the state in the right direction. It also empowers the parliament to in future hold the executive to account and say, what have you done to begin to reduce some of these unjustified discrepancies? Obviously, it doesn't mean you're going to pay the entry-level employee the same as you pay a DG, but we do need to reduce some of these obscenities because they really are unjustifiable, especially in the entities, Chair. In local government, and look, we know there's been a long, sensitive discussion around, do you have a single public service, which includes national, provincial government, as well as local government? We know there are merits and demerits on all sides. It's a sensitive issue. So there is need for further discussion on that point. But in local government too, you can see the same kind of challenges. And there is a consequence. So if you look at what you pay municipal managers, some of these rural municipalities, it is so little that you'll be better off applying to become a PA to a minister. And then you have to ask yourself, no wonder then we are struggling to find the relative skills, which Alabot is raising about attracting people to rural areas. If you look at one municipality, Chair Ditsobotla in the northwest, which is a perennial poster child for malgovernance, for chaos. I think it's been out of administration for about 4 times in the past decade. When Cooperative did a survey of the skills of the top management, I think no one had more than a matric. Yet these are officials, directors who are in charge of utilities, engineering, etc. So I think, Chair, this clause, this bill won't resolve all of these issues, but it's a useful step forward in the right direction. We do need a much further detailed discussions, especially on local government. I know slightly outside these bills. Chair, on the issue of the political rights, look, it's a slippery slope. It's a sensitive, it's a delicate issue. The Constitution does clarify what are the rights of society of workers, especially on political expression, freedom of association. We understand the logic that says you wouldn't want a commissioner of SARS, for example, to be an office bearer in any political party, commissioner of police, etc. And so we thought the original clause of the bill, which is what is before the members now, strikes a fair compromise, that it says the heads of department, so the DGs or the commissioners, their senior management reporting directly to them. So that's your DDGs, for example, or deputy police commissioner. We thought that when it went to be a blanket ban, that is a very dangerous and slippery slope, because the logic of saying that, well, a cleaner or security guard can bully a minister or a mayor, we felt didn't hold water. And of course, if you went that far, the next step would be to extend a kind of a ban to employees of parastatals. And then you also extend that ban to employees of essential companies. You will end up finding, Chair, that we're a society where nobody has the right of political freedom of association. But, Chair, we understand the need for give and take and a balanced approach. We understand the calls for a professional public service, etc. So hence we felt the compromise of what's in the bill now. We think it's a fair compromise, and I think the fact that the recent Constitutional Court case around the Municipal Systems Act confirmed that it's the senior management, but it's not across the service. And we think that first prevents the right balance. It is a delicate issue, but I think, Chair, we do appreciate needing to find each other. And I think for ourselves, we're comfortable on that balance. We would not have been comfortable if it had been a blanket ban. And I think the fact that Concord has ruled on that, I think gives all of us, that kind of certainty and clarity at the end of the day. But Chair, I think last on that point, we had to see when the Municipal Systems Act had a blanket ban for all 350,000 municipal employees. Municipal employees were being dismissed and fired left and right. But I think, fortunately, Chair, we managed to resolve it, and I think we're now in the right place, and that's why we're able as COSATU to give our full support for both the PSA and the Palmer bills, and thinking that we have found rational compromises to all what are quite delicate issues. But I hopefully I've answered Honourable Kaza's questions. Thanks, Chair, and thanks, members.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parks. You have, of course, responded to all questions. We wish to thank you for having taken your time to come before the Select Committee to present on behalf of COSATU and NEHAWU. You can still remain in the platform to hear other presenters. Thank you very much. We are now moving to Ms. Yoliswa Makasi from New South Institute, former DG of the department. We now welcome you, former DG, Ms. Yoliswa Makasi. Over to you. The platform is yours.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning to the Chairperson and honorable members and colleagues, former colleagues from the department and colleagues from the public sector broadly in civil society. I will jump the first slides, Chair. I just want to move to my slide that talks to introduction. I am representing the New South Institute, and we have been part of this process throughout with the public hearings and made relevant submissions to all processes. Our key areas of focus for this submission, we're looking at background and historical context. We are looking at the rationale for the separation of roles, mandatory delegations of administrative powers, the heads of departments, which is on clause 4. We're also looking at limitation of political rights, which is clause 6, and other aspects. I must say, Chair, that our presentation focuses mainly on the Public Service Amendment Bill. We are not making specific inputs on the second one, the PEM bill. We are basically in agreement with the proposals that are coming through in the PEM bill. We think that they are part of a broader legislative agenda to ensure reforms in the public sector, and therefore we are in support. We've shared slides, but I just added one slide, Chair, looking at the fact that we have participated in the legislative review process since inception, and we are focusing mainly on mandatory delegations as well as limitation of political rights. We do know that in 1994, when the ANC-led government inherited the civil service, there were issues of trust regarding the who will be championing the policies in the administration. So that is not a question, and as a result, the political executive at the time was given wide discretion and influence in matters of administration. They were given wide powers to recruit public servants and intervene in operational decisions. And our view is that 30 years later into our democracy, we are stabilizing, and some of the transformation objectives have been met by government. And also we have lessons from state capture and other processes that have unfolded that point to the need to really separate the roles of political principals and administrators. It is our view that political principles should be focused on constitutional policy and strategic matters, and heads of departments and entire departmental machinery be responsible for execution of policies, execution of the departmental strategy, as well as all operational matters, including human capital management. And I highlight a few observations that we have made from the provincial hearings, Chairperson, that we participated in. We participated in a majority of these hearings, and there are several strengths and challenges that we noticed. Several strengths include I think there was inclusive participation and logistical support to overcome language and geographical barriers. There was well-coordinated hybrid hearings in remote provinces, and there was respectful engagement and community involvement. Some of the challenges, there were low levels of public understanding about the bill's contents and implications, especially the Public Service Amendment Bill. I think that, I guess what accounts for that is the fact that this is work of transforming, or rather work of reforming the public sector is quite a niche on its own. There was absence of oversight bodies, civil society actors, and departmental staff in terms of numbers. So we had mostly general members of communities who are participating in these activities. And I think the absence of oversight bodies, civil society structures, and departments, employees in government would have brought even more strength in terms of the substantive engagements. Digital connectivity issues in some of the virtual sessions, which reduced the quality of engagement. So those are some of the areas of improvement. Enhancing public education and communication campaigns ahead of hearings so that people are prepared. Improving technical infrastructure for online and hybrid participation, and ensuring diverse stakeholder representation, especially amongst those working within and amongst the sector that the legislation is affecting. Just moving into a little bit about the historical context, we thought it's important to just go to the history so that there is an understanding why we support the proposals that are being made currently. In terms of the brief history, we know that in 1995, we had a white paper on transformation of the public service, and it was focusing on devolution and decentralization, but also increased accountability for performance against specific objectives. Then 1997, the Public Service Amendment Laws, which basically the MPSA, Minister for Public Service and Administration, responsible for human resource policy, including appointment, promotions, and etc. And the functions that were previously delegated to the Public Service Commission pre-1994 was now delegated to EAs, which is your executive authorities, and the EAs could in turn delegate these to the departmental heads. Then we have the National Development Plan, which I've jumped to 2012 now with the National Development Plan, and it directs that there must be a focus on skills and professionalism, and analyzes the entire environment in which the public service is operating on. And also one of the issues relates to the political administrative interface and thereby the need to separate roles and responsibilities of political principals and administrative heads. There's a direct quote there from the NDP. And it further identified challenges with political administrative interface and proposes the devolution of administrative powers to heads of departments and senior managements. Then we had what is called the cabinet approved minimum levels of delegations from EAs to HODs. This was, I think, in order to bridge the gap from the fact that the Public Service Act gave those delegations directly to the executive authorities. And so ministers, HODs, this is a process that was spearheaded by Foresight and taken to cabinet, where there was ultimately a directive from the Minister for Public Service and Administration in August 2014 regarding those specific delegations. And the biggest challenge with this process has been that the delegations are discretionary in terms of the Public Service Act, and therefore a political principal may withdraw the delegations as and when they wish, or when they are happy with the HOD, or when there's a disagreement about this and that. I will not go into detail about that slide, but it's just to show the information regarding the challenge with the delegation, with the current delegation environment. Now we move into the case for mandatory devolution of administrative powers. For us, we thought let's go back into the rationale for separating roles and responsibility and go into public administration theory, because obviously public administration there's a framework which guides the work and how things are organized in public administration. And there's somebody who is regarded as a founder of public administration, Woodrow Wilson, highlighting about political administrative dichotomy, and therefore the distinction between elected officials who make policy and career civil servants who implement it. There's always an overlap between the two, but it's important that that overlap is managed, because also administrators bring the technical capability in terms of policy development work. Also, Woodrow Wilson says the public administration must be apolitical. It must focus on enforcing laws and policies efficiently, irrespective of political loyalty. And also, it's important to shield public servants from political interference and promotion of merit-based recruitment and processes in the public service, supports constitutional values, strengthens accountability, and promotes service aligned with democratic principles. And we mentioned those principles. I think honorable members know them very well, so I don't need to touch base on them now. Now, part of the key issues we're looking at is really separating political and administrative roles, is that it promotes efficiency, accountability, and neutrality in governance. So when each one of the people in the system is able to stick to their role and perform in terms of their mandate and their roles and responsibilities, the accountability and neutrality in governance is promoted. Our constitution mandates impartial and responsive public administration. The historical context also shows dangers of politicized appointments and the need for merit-based recruitment. Clear accountability improves governance oversight by institutions like Parliament, professional civil servants, ensures stability during political changes, and supports a developmental state. Politicians come and go, but it's assumed that civil servants are the ones who remain in the system for continuity purposes as well. I'm going to jump this slide, but I just want to highlight one thing here, is that the issue of mandatory delegation of powers to HODs as well as is essential for professional public service. Especially one of the issues we are raising is optimizing resource use and aligning public administration with financial management. You would know that the PFMA delegates directly all financial management responsibilities to the heads of departments as accounting officers, and the Public Service Act is not aligned in terms of that. We also need to speed up decision making and enhance the political administrative interface, and also HODs must accept accountability and encourage innovation through decentralization. So when there's an ambiguity in definition of roles, HODs tend not to accept responsibility and at times hide behind the political principles when it's time to account for performance of a department. And they will be citing incidents where I couldn't do this, I couldn't fill vacancies because the minister was not available for interviews. When you deal with vacancy management, especially at a senior management level, or for this or that reason. Limitation of political rights is another issue that we talk to. COSATU has spoken a lot on this issue. I'm not going to spend much time on it, Chair, but I think for us, it's always to remind ourselves that the right to join and participate in a political party is a fundamental right for all South Africans, including those who are working in the public service. So we support this idea of limiting political rights in terms of these processes to HODs and those who report to them, because we think it also helps with managing a possible conflict of interest and also ensuring that HODs spend all their time focused on driving the agenda of the department and the government at large. Then on other matters that we wanted to highlight, this is an issue that I've heard raised a lot in the hearings by some of the concerned members, even some of the political principals when they are asking questions, the honorable members. So clause 2 of the amendments indicate that in support to devolution, there are necessary checks and balances that are included in the amendments. These checks and balances include that as you devolve these administrative powers to the HOD must be held accountable to the executive authority for the administration of the department and the functional area of responsibility. They must report as and when required. That's an agreement between them and the executive authority. They must assist the executive authority to fulfill the executive authority's accounting obligations in relation to the department and the constitution. Therefore, it is our view that the authority of the executive authority is being strengthened in Section 3.9, because the executive authority may intervene in instances where the HOD fails or refuses to fulfill a power or duty as required in terms of the Act. And of course, there are disciplinary processes in government, and ultimately that results to consequences that the EA has a responsibility to pursue in such cases. Chair, as a conclusion, we just want to highlight that the NSI supports the proposed legislative amendments. All administrative powers necessary for, but not limited to, the recruitment, appointment, secondment, transfer, and performance management of employees, including that of deputy directors, is directly vested in the heads of department. All strategic powers and responsibility which enables policy direction and guidance must be vested with the relevant executive authority being the political head. The political limitations is narrow and restrictive and is aimed at supporting the professionalization of the public service and delineation of roles and responsibilities. And lastly, that there are checks and balances provided in Section 2, and these strengthen the role of the EA. On that note, Chair, would like to take this opportunity to thank the committee for giving us an opportunity to participate and be part of these processes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nakasi, and your team for having prepared and also engaging us as a select committee on your submissions. We are looking forward to continue engaging you up until the end of this process. Honorable members, it's now your turn if there are questions, clarities. Ms. Makasi will have advantage to respond to your questions because she's been part of formulation and now she's out of the system, but she's participating through her new assignment. Let's take comments, not comments, questions and clarities. Honorable Peter, I see your hand. You are the only one. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, my fear is on COSATU. I just want to ask, does COSATU fully covered about this, about some of these clauses of this bill?
Sorry, Honorable Peter, COSATU sudlulile.
Sedlulile. Oh, I sorry, Baba.
Usale kakhulu ngemumva sewuze waqeda kwangena abanye.
Thank you, Baba.
Ubufuna uCOSATU. Okay, no, thank you. No, thank you very much. Without any further delays, we'll have to move to the next presenter. That will be Mr. Chulanzuza, who will be presenting as a South African citizen. Over to you, Babu Unzuza. The platform is yours. Babu Unzuza, are you here in the platform? Mr. Nzuza? It looks like Mr. Nzuza is not here. Let's check. Bramos will take another presenter. Yes, Mr. Manel?
Is there, Chair? The problem, he muted himself, but now he's unmuted, Chair. He can speak, Chair. Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Nzuza, are you available? Can you unmute yourself? Yeah, you have unmuted yourself, Mr. Nzuza. Can you respond? Are you there? It means it's got some technical glitches. Just work on it, Mr. Manele, with him. Then we'll take the next presenter, then he will come back after he has sorted out the technical glitches if he's faced with them. We then move to Mr. Nel, representing South African Teachers Union. We wish to welcome you, sir, and hand over to you for your representation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Can you see my screen? Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can see your presentation. If you can put it on the presentation mode.
I'm trying to check if I'm going to share just a PDF document.
Yeah, it's better now. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Chairperson, members of the committee, honorable members, colleagues, members of the public, thank you for the opportunity for us to share our views with you. We perused the Act, and we are a teachers union, the South African Teachers Union, better known as the SAOU. We represent about 59,000 members in the sector, of which 30,000 roughly is employed in terms of the Employment of Educators Act, and a further 2,000 is employed in terms of the Public Service Act. So this act will influence our members, and it will have a huge effect on our members. We note that the Act has come a long way since its inception, so there's been a lot of changes, and we are comfortable with most of them. We agree with most of the changes. So regarding the definitions, we agree with the amendments, especially by the inclusion of a political office in the definitions, and we think that was a necessary move. Further, if we look at 2C, we also support these amendments. The executive authority must be involved in the strategic planning and the policy direction of the government and of the public service. We agree that the HOD must focus more on the administrative tasks, the day-to-day running of the departments, and these amendments will make that a reality. Further, if we look at 2E, we support these amendments as well. This authority must be allocated to the executive authority, and it was a necessary amendment. We, however, believe there must be more powers that is allocated to the employees, and that there must be reference in the Act of such rights, and they must have the opportunity to voice their concerns and to lodge grievances, etc. I know same will be provided for regulations, but I believe it will be beneficial if the Act can refer to those as well. Then if we go to Section 6, which deals with Section 13 of the Principal Act, we agree with the provisions regarding probation, and we believe that reference must be made to the legal position on probation. Probation is currently regulated by Section 8.1 of the Code of Good Practice to dismissals, which is attached to the LRA, and we believe that must still be applicable. If we can proceed to Section 7, which deals with Section 14 of the Principal Act. This is regarding the transfer of employees. As my learned colleagues rightly mentioned, that a transfer can be very beneficial for the department and for the employees if it's done correctly. So mention must be made that it must be fair, it must be rational, and legal position regarding transfers must be taken into account. Further, if we look at Section 10, which speaks to Section 16B of the Principal Act, we agree with these amendments, and this goes along to ensure accountability.
Sorry, Chair, through you. Oh, yeah, now it's moving. Sorry, it was not moving at all.
Sorry for that.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Kaza.
So if we can proceed to Section 11, which deals with Section 17 of the Act. We agree these amendments are logical, and it ensures effective processes that must be put in place. If we proceed to number 12, or Section 12 of the Act, we agree with these amendments. It brings the normal practices, or it brings the Public Service Act in line with the normal practices in the employment sector. And then finally, I want to refer you to Section 16. Section 16 deals with the political offices of the HODs, etc. A lot has been said regarding this so far. We agree that this is a necessary amendment. We don't think it influenced the constitutional rights of the employees, and it's reasonable to expect them not to hold a political office. They can still join a political party. They can merely not be allowed to hold a political office. Thank you, sir. That's all from our side. We don't have any input regarding the farmer.
Are you done, Mr. Nel?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your presentations. Honorable members, are there any questions of clarities? I see Honorable Peter. Yes, Honorable Peter can come in.
Honorable Chair, I've got the same question which I do want to pose to this teachers union. My question is just simple, Chair. I just want to check to this teachers union, does these bills not affect any environment that eliminate the powers of the working class, which is championed by these teachers union in general? Or it won't turn against this bill when things doesn't cover or suits their interest? I just want to pose those questions. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Nel.
Thank you, Chairperson. It was a very good point made by an honourable member. The section relating to transfers, probations, that will in fact affect our members directly. And for that reason, we made the submission that it would be good if there can be some more elaboration on this to ensure that their rights is protected in this regard. Thank you, sir. Nothing further from my side.
Thank you, Mr. Nel. I hope you are covered, Honorable Peter.
100% covered. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable members, let's check Mr. Nzuza if he's back. Mr. Nzuza, are you winning?
Greetings, Honorable Chair. I don't know if you are able to hear me.
I see a food. We can see you. You can put your presentation. Thank you, sir. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair, and greetings. Greetings to the honorable committee members. Let me just quickly get to share my presentation. Okay, and then I go to the okay, thank you, Chair. Sorry about that. Are you able to see my screen?
It's still loading on my gadget.
Okay.
Just double click in that.
Okay. Are you able to see it?
Yes, it's now through. Thank you very much.
You
can proceed.
Okay, thank you. My name is Tulani Nzuza, as I'm just an individual making the submission as a citizen. So basically, I would like to cover the aspects that I've outlined in the presentation outline there, the purpose, and then the preamble to my submission, giving also context to the submission and what one proposes into specific sections of the bill, that maybe there be a consideration of an amendment, and then one will make the closing remarks at the end. I hope that since there's the other speakers that have spoken on the matter, like especially Kosatu and how as represented by Mr. Parks, and also other presenters that covered some of the aspects that I'll cover, like Yosatu and Dr. Meni. I hope that my individual submission won't be trampled by that collective in terms of consideration by the committee. But basically, the purpose of the submission is that there be a consideration by the Select Committee on Cooperative Governance and Public Administration in relation to the Public Service Amendment Bill. And the submission pertains or relates to the exercise of power by the designated minister, who is actually the custodian of the Public Service Act, of which then the bill will begin to talk to issues that are contained therein, in terms of issuing the regulations, in terms of Section 41(1) of the PSA, as contemplated in Section 17(2)(d) of the same Act. And if one were to put it differently, basically the submission that I'm making relates to Section 11 in the Public Administration Management Amendment Bill. There's a section that is marked 11, so of which it talks to Section 17 of the Public Service Act. So I believe I'm still audible. Proceeding in terms of the preamble of the submission, Section 41 of the Public Service Act 1998, as amended, empowers the designated minister to issue regulations in giving effect to Section 17(2)(d) of the Public Service Act that deals with the dismissal of or termination of employment of the public servants who will have been found to have conducted, maybe found guilty of any misconduct that will have been listed in any of the regulations that I will talk to in specific terms. So that, in other words, how I see that particular provisions, it actually advances, amongst others, Section 3 of the Employment Equity Act 55 of 1998 in terms of prevention of discrimination of employees in the workplace, and also serves as an empowering provision in the promulgation of the codes of good practice, which is obviously a good thing and an important aspect. However, the application of the precautionary principle, in my view, such is very necessary in legislating or in any considerations in terms of putting laws in place. It's important, or it's necessary in the exercise of power in the issuance of the regulations as to ensure that the state organs do not inadvertently become proponents of inequality, or that they perpetuate such inequalities that already exist, since we know that there is, we always talk of the triple challenge of inequalities, of which those also can be there in the workplace environment or in the space of the working environment. Thus, then, if that happens, it will trample the rights to equal protection and benefit of the law contemplated in Section 9(1) of the Constitution, which includes, which talks to the freedom of trade, occupation, profession. So therefore, a careful balance is very necessary, in my view, in dealing with these matters, in legislating, that you also be able to ensure that we don't legislate in a way that then that will begin to worsen the inequality at the end of the day. So in the same breath, one does not wish to underplay the importance of discipline in the workplace. Importantly, in the backdrop of the social ills that relates to some of the misconducts that are listed in some of the public service and administration regulations, which then ends or permeates in the end into the workplace. Those ills of the social ills at the end finds themselves into the workplace, because obviously the workplace is filled by those bodies that are forming part or constituent of societies. So the context of the submission is that there is a regulation 61.1 of the Public Service Regulations of 2016 as amended in 2023, I believe, which promulgated in terms of Section 41 of the Public Service Act, which prohibits the re-employment of employees dismissed from employment for acts of misconduct that are listed therein. That is the particular regulation, but the main thing before one gets to the regulation, there is an empowering provision in the legislation that gives that source of power to the minister designated to be able to regulate the sector, the public service, in terms of discipline matters. So in that regulation, it does talk to different periods of prohibition that applies to different misconducts. Like if one were to look at the case of, it will be your financial misconducts, it will be your sexual harassment, of which the submission, when I made it earlier on, it was 4 years, especially for sexual harassment in 2020. It was 4 years. It was 4 years as a prohibition from re-employment by then. But since 2023, due to the amendments, I've noted that that regulation has increased the prohibition now from re-employment in the public service to 5 years. So in my submission, or in my view, I feel one is of the view that the regulation does not set a minimum period that must be served before reconsideration for re-employment. Like if you look at the issues of your criminal matters, in criminal matters, there is what they call the parole issue, wherein somebody will have served a certain number of years, and then they may be from there be considered for parole, and then be able to be released under certain conditions that can be put in place and all that. But in this instance, in terms of the public service side of things, that seems not to be there. One has to serve the full prohibition period. Like now, it has been increased to 5 years for some of the misconducts. So one has to serve the full 5 years without any chance of being reconsidered. So that, in my view, seems to perpetuate retribution or punishment than restoration or correction, and thus may inadvertently perpetuate inequality in this regard. If you compare the two scenarios of people who are in the public service in particular, and those that will be general people that are criminal offenders. So in my view, there is a need for a reconsideration around that. So the proposed amendment, from my perspective, one will start off by saying that the regulation contemplated in Section 41 of the Public Service Act of 1998, in effecting Section 17.2d, if it may infuse the minimum periods of prohibition in the employment in the public service linked to specific misconducts, as already there is a list of those misconducts with different prohibition periods. And then after which one may be considered for re-employment, but obviously setting conditions for repeat misconduct, which may allow for imposition of a suspended prohibition period or an imposition of a new prohibition period that is applicable to that specific misconduct that will have been established, and then of which must be served in full without an option for re-employment at the minimum prohibition period served. That meaning that there should there be in the future that there is a minimum that is set that one needs to serve, and then from there they can be reconsidered for re-employment. That should a person commit misconduct at that time, where there's still that suspension of the certain period, that then should that misconduct be established through the processes, disciplinary processes, then that particular person should be prohibited from re-employment and be made to serve the full term. That is the view that one is having. In particular, if you look at that, I think I've done a screenshot of a section that I was talking to, of which the promulgation, it sources the power. There is a section 41 that gives the power to the minister to be able to regulate in terms of disciplinary matters, and then that in that, if you look at the 11, there is that section that is 11 that deals with section 17 of the Principal Act. And then if you go down to the B, that starts off by saying that by the substitution of section 3 for paragraph B of the following paragraph, then it has got another B. There is a section that one has highlighted there that says after the expiry of the period. So the proposal is that if there could be before the period, there could be an insertion of minimum, and then going to the period, then we insert that. That will then will give power to the designated minister to be able to regulate in terms of section 41 of the PSA. That will include them, meaning that in the regulation, the minister will be able now to decide in terms of the minimum prohibition period for each of the listed misconducts. To say, let me say, maybe in the case of financial misconduct, maybe they say it's 10 years. Then they say maybe at least one will have to have served maybe 5 years before they can be reconsidered. Then, but if after they've been reconsidered and reappointed, then they conduct similar offense or related, then that then begins to kick in terms of then whatever the sanction that will be imposed on the person after being found guilty, then that they will have to serve the full now, which is the 10 years, not the minimum. Or you can maybe even consider the addition of what was actually suspended. So that is the proposition, Chair, that one wishes to make in particular to deal with that, because if there is that insertion of minimum before period, that then gives it gives the minister responsible power in terms of regulating to be able to set those minimums and be able to allow that, then people can be still considered, but not underplaying the issue that discipline is an important aspect in the workplace and it must be dealt properly in terms of the labor laws that are in place, and also it must be effective. So we are not, one is not underplaying the importance of that, but also it's important that one, in my closing remarks now, moving from that submission in terms of what proposition one is making or an insertion that can be made in terms of the current bill, in terms of the specific section, that we need to also have that understanding, in as much as I understand that we have got our duly elected lawmakers, but one is just highlighting this just to make it that there is an emphasis into it, not to say now one wants to usurp the powers that they may not have, but just the contribution that can be considered together with a pool of other considerations, that we understand that the law regulates the conduct or the relations or the relationship between the state and the people, which is more of a vertical application, but also in terms of the horizontal application, the relations between the people. So the laws when we make the laws, they should be biased towards restoration than retributive, than being retributive. So that is the point that one wants to also make, and that also the legislative exercise should always have those to be affected in mind in the process of legislating, because there are real people, families, juristic persons that are affected by any laws that are passed. So if that consideration is always next to us when we do this, it will assist a lot, because if somebody has to serve 10 years, you find that there could have been a consideration, like in the case of your parole, in the criminal proceeding side of things, that in 5 years, maybe let's consider those people. And then should they believing that they will have corrected their behavior and they will have been restored in terms of what is the norm, what is the standard the society expects of them, then we should be able to consider those and not just then let them run the full course of like your 10 years and then only see them after that. Also, we should always understand that there are real people that are behind that were probably supported by that particular person that will be out there for the next 10 years, not able to make any income to be able to support their families. And that also has got a trickle-down effect in terms of our social ills in the society due to that particular exercise of power. So basically, Chair, that is my submission. Sengingasho nje ukuthi ngithi ngibonga kakhulu ngethuba eningiphe lona, and also ngidlulise through you, Chair, my appreciation to the Secretariat of the committee, Mr. Manele, for the support that he has provided. Ngithi enkosi, thank you, Rialebucha, siyabonga.
Siyabonga Mshazi. Thank you very much for your representation. If you don't mind, if I can just ask you, are you in the private sector or public sector, or you are in business?
I'm a student at this point.
Okay, no, thank you very much. You are more than protected as a citizen to be here. And you have already made your own views well known, and will forward them to the department and ask the department to respond when we are finalizing these pieces of legislation. Honorable members, any clarity seeking question for Mr. Nzuza or Babu Nzimande? Honorable Nzimande from Gauteng.
No, good morning or good day. I thought I will not be asking questions. I will just listen because really there will be time for us to engage. But what I want just to check, maybe it's in line with what we are asking, but probably the presenter may share some light in his viewpoint. The question that I am asking is whether the presenter is aware of the section that he's talking to, section 17 of the Public Service Act, and what its intent to regulate. One, the issue of that section deals with the abscondment. In a case where an employee will disappear without trace, then that person is regarded as dismissed as per the operation of law, not necessarily dismissal for misconduct that will be within the context of LRA. It's just an operation of law that the person has abdicated his responsibility. But section 17, 3B, the B that he is referring to, is the B, it's a section that serves as a caution that it might be likely that there were some reasonable explanation that can be provided by this particular individual. For example, maybe a person was in a coma, wouldn't have been able to communicate with the employer about his or her whereabouts, then that provision as a caution is that the employee, irrespective of the lapse of time, which is 30 days, may make a presentation to the executive authority to say, for me not to be able to come to work and not to be reachable was this particular reason. And if obviously the reasons are so sound and convincing, then without following a lot of processes that are defined.
Honorable Zimande.
Yes.
Honorable Zimande, that's a statement. You are not asking a
No,
question with clarity.
No, I'm asking a question. But
yeah,
I have
it's quite a long one. It's quite a long one. Can you just go straight to the questions?
No, okay. Then the simple question is that is the presenter thinking the section 17 has any relationship with 61 in relation to the issue of dismissal? Because there's nothing that relates to that. It has to do with the issue of abscondment.
Thank you. That's a clear question. Mr. Nzuza, Mshas.
Thank you, Chair. I think you can still hear me. Are you able? Am I audible? Am I audible, Chair?
Yes, you are, sir.
Okay, thank you, Chair. My understanding, or maybe my submission, is specific. It does not deal with Section 61. It was dealing with Section 41 of the Public Service Act, of which that particular section is linked to the Section 17 of the same Act in terms of dealing with matters of misconduct. And also the Act does empower the minister to regulate. Regulation, in my understanding, includes the issue of the regulation 61.1. I mean, okay, when you talk of the 61, in terms of the regulation, in my view, the specific part I was covering is the issue of the various misconducts that are listed there and the prohibition period from re-employment. That is the submission that one wanted to deal with in terms of the submission. So I'm not too sure. And the issue was to try to indicate that in the way it is, the legislation it is now, it's such that one has to serve the full prohibition period. And that, in my view, it's in a way kind of cause or leads to the issue of, or maybe it's like the state organs will be actually perpetuating the issue of inequality, in that somebody who is in the criminal, though those are two different sides, two different areas, but if you look at criminal side of things, offenders that are sentenced are given at some point they are reconsidered for parole. So what one is trying to make, the point one is trying to make here is that if there could be that issue of putting a minimum period that needs to be served, and after which then one can be reconsidered for a reappointment. But then if they lapse in terms of during that period, then there should be some measures in place to deal with that. But the main issue is that the way things are, in the 2023 amendment of those regulations, now some of the prohibition periods have been increased, meaning that a person, like I made an example of the 10 years, maybe for financial misconduct, that though one does not want to underplay the importance of dealing with these ills, but also we need to be cognizant of the fact that these are the real people that we are dealing with. The law tries to regulate the conduct of these people, but also in the end, we need to understand that these people have got a system that they support that is linked to them. If you alienate them for 10 years from the system without an option of giving or reconsideration of their reemployment, for me, that seems to be a bit harsh. But maybe the legislators, in the way they've seen it, they felt it was necessary. But to me, I feel it's a bit harsh. There could be a minimum period that could be put in place that one needs to serve at least, let's say if it's a 5-year period, a prohibition, that one says you need to serve at least 2.5 years. And then after that, you can be reconsidered, hoping that you will have reflected, you will have corrected, and you can be a better person going forward. So that is the understanding, in my view, that yes, Section 61, it's a regulation that obviously it's in place because of also Section 41 linked to Section 17 of the Public Service Act. So that is the link or the relations that I'm trying to establish. But for us to be able to influence that regulation powers, it needs to be influenced from the empowering provision legislation in terms of the minimum period. That is the response, Chair. If maybe that is the response that one can give.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nzuza. On behalf of the collective leadership of this select committee, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to all of you for your representations. Indeed, this is testament to the fact that the entrenchment of our democracy compels us as legislators to ascertain that in all processes, members of the public, civil society, all stakeholders are fully involved and fully participate in the process of lawmaking. So we are compelled, the Constitution compels us to do this, and we really appreciate your efforts that you have put on your very insightful presentations, which really enlightened the process in terms of what needs to be taken into consideration when these processes are finalized. And we value all inputs. Then the department will come before this committee and respond to each and every presentation that you have made, all the issues that you have raised with us. Then we'll then take the process forward after such engagements. On behalf of the committee, we wish to thank you for taking your time. We know that you also have your own busy schedules, but we are available for this interface with the committee to deliberate on these important issues, because we all aimed at improving how services are rendered to our citizens, professionalization of our public sector, as well as ensuring that the accountability, responsiveness is guaranteed in everything that government does. So we really thank you and we wish you everything of the best in your organizations to continue to serve the members of the public and your constituencies. With that, we wish to thank you. We've come to an end of our session. And we also wish to thank members of the Select Committee for having listened to all the presentations without taking a break. That is highly appreciated. And our personal support team, led by Mr. Manele, for putting together and interacting with all stakeholders. And we really appreciate the feedback that you have given us about how Mr. Manele have treated you. We know him like that, even in this committee, that he does his work, and he want to make sure that he's always giving it best in whatever task that he's giving. So we thank him for that, and we really appreciate your feedback when it comes to that. So we wish you everything of the best. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, honorable members. The meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.
Siyabonga, Sihlalo.
Thank you.
Siyabonga.